Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the It's Just Dinner podcast, where we're changing the dating culture one episode at a time. I'm your host, Tom Robinson, and sitting right across from me, my co-host, Bob Walls.
Tom, it's great to be here. What a beautiful day it is.
It is a gorgeous day.
We've got great guests. We've got great friends. A lot of excitement here in the studio today.
How about two young women sitting with us today?
This is so thrilling.
We have Sophia back. Welcome back, Sophia.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good to have you.
Yes.
And I brought Macy back with us.
Guys, I keep getting
She did so well last time.
We can't get rid of her.
Well, we don't want to get rid of her.
She's so pleasant and delightful that we've brought her back again.
Yes, thank you.
You guys are so sweet. Thanks for letting me back on.
Well, you're welcome. We're glad to have you.
Well, Bob, we have a guest today, and I'm really excited about our guest.
Yes.
This is Mel New, and Mel is a Christian dating coach.
Wow.
And she's from Phoenix, so we only bring the best in.
Well, apparently so.
And she's living in Southern California right now. She is the founder and owner of the IYKYK.
IYKYK.
Yeah. If
that's
you know,
gonna need some
you
splaining.
know.
That's
Dating.
going to need some splaining right there.
We'll talk to her about how she came up with that name. She also runs a singles community with over 5,000 members across the U.S.
Wow.
She does, and we'll talk to her a little bit more about this, but she does a lot of Christian dating mixers, and she does some virtual workshops. And really what she's interested in doing is empowering the women of the Christian community, helping them to become stronger, and helping them to date better.
Wow. Well, Mel, we've been talking a lot about you like you're not here.
Yeah.
So,
Mel, welcome.
Welcome today.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Now, it sounds like from the description here that most of your clients are female, that you kind of concentrate more on the female side of this, or do you have both male and female?
I do have both male and female clients, but I am mostly focused on female clients.
Okay. And did it just shake out that way, or did you do that intentionally?
It kind of ended up just shaking out that way. I started off with both male and female clients, and I really enjoy working with guys too. But my business coach said I got to niche down. And so I think it's a good idea too, because I'm a woman. I'm more specialized and expert in the dating side from a woman's point of view.
Okay, that, I guess that's why we have two.
That's why we brought two
Tom,
ladies.
You're
in
way
today.
ahead of me on this deal.
Yeah.
And so the 5,000 that you have in your group, are those then mostly females across the United States?
No, actually, the 5,000 is our Facebook group. So it's a free Facebook group that we have. And that is both male and female. And it's been really cool to see people have met. We've actually had 3 people get married who met in the Facebook group. And so it's just a great opportunity for male and female single Christians to have some community.
Very good. Now, Mel, I mentioned that you do host these Christian dating mixers. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Where did the idea come from, and how long have you been doing this?
Sure. So, long story short, when I was in college, I had this idea of, what if we got all the single Christians from all the different campus ministries together for a big party or a big get together. Because, I was like, all the guys in Young Life are so cute. I'd love to meet them. But I'm not in Young Life. And so that's where I think God really gave me the vision. And then fast forward a whole bunch of years, I was at just a hangout with some girlfriends, and one of my friends said, I really want to try Christian speed dating. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's kind of like the vision I had. And I had actually worked for a secular speed dating company hosting their speed dating. And I realized, I'm like, this is pretty easy. I could put it together for Christians. And so 2021 on Valentine's Day, we ran our first speed dating event out of her house. And there ended up being about 90 people that came 3 different events. Somebody actually got married from it as well.
Nice.
So that was really exciting. And then people were just like, well, when's the next one? When's the next one? So we ran a few more during 2021. And then at the end of 2021, we did a mixer for the first time so we could get a lot more people in. And it ended up being a success. And from then, I felt like God was telling me to pivot towards counseling. And so I applied to be a marriage family therapist at San Diego State.
Oh, awesome.
And at the same time, I also created a TikTok for these mixers, being like, oh, it'd be cool to go other places around the country. And also then at that time, at the end of the year, I felt like God was telling me to give just a big sum of money. And I was like, I don't know, God, I just was, applying to school, not thinking I was going to be really poor. And I just felt like he was like saying like, 500,000. And then he's like, just give all your savings. And I was like, oh gosh, Lord,
what?
All my savings.
And so you've put all of your savings into this endeavor, into this venture?
So, well, I felt like he was saying, give it away, like, give it to me. And so I said, okay, Lord, if that's what you're asking, like, I don't really understand why, but, I've seen you come through too many times with other things. And so I, tithed it away, and the little tear in my eye, I was like, okay, God, you better freaking come through, because like I'm going to be on the streets of San Diego if not. And it was so cool because, like I said, we made that TikTok account and it just went viral like 2 months after that. Wow. And I was like, interesting. I was like, I would kind of like to bring these mixers around the country, but God called me to counseling and marriage family therapy. And so if I get in, I'm going to put the mixers on the back burner, even though it seems like the trajectory is looking really good in TikTok. Lots of people were saying, come to my city, come to my state. And then I ended up not getting into the program, which I was kind of excited about, because I was like, no, I can move forward with the IYK mixers.
Right.
And just to see God's favor just pour out on this new business venture was incredible. And tons of people just started DMing and emailing, being like, I want to volunteer, I want to help in this way. And we had a graphic designer come in and help design like a website. And someone even DM'd us being like, can I donate money? And I was like, this isn't a charity, just so you know. And just so we're on the same page. And she's like, I just felt like God was telling me to like give you guys money. And I was like, awesome. Wow. And so she's Venmo me $500. And I'm like, wow, God is so good. Like, he's not going to call you to something that he's not going to fund, and he's not going to help. And so it's really such a God, like a God thing of how it all got started.
Isn't faith wonderful?
That's very inspiring to hear. Now I'm assuming that at the beginning of this, that there was some realization on your part that dating had become dysfunctional. You're dealing more in the Christian realm. Is that one of the things that inspired you to want to do this? Was it noticeable to you that dating had become less functional than it was perhaps in previous generations?
A lot of people say that, and this is, yes. I have a whole theory of, I think it really changed. I know it really changed when the text message started. Because you think about it, it created a very low barrier to entry. So before, a guy would have to call your house, and they'd have to risk, talking to your dad or talking to your roommate, whatever. But now it's like, all you need is a Snapchat, all you need is a text message. And there's unlimited amount of text messaging now. And so unfortunately, I think that, like our parents and, maybe ministry leaders, whatever, they really, if they got married pre-text message, they don't know the landscape of what it's like to date up in a post-text message world. Because there's just, there's not getting attached early. There's just so many things, especially as women, like just to keep in mind of like, okay, like it doesn't really take much effort on a guy's end to just send you a text message because he's lonely one night. It doesn't mean he likes you. It doesn't mean he has any intentions of dating you or committing to you. And so I've found that a lot of the pain happens in those very, very beginning dating stages where you're not quite sure where you stand with a guy, and for girls and for guys too. And I think a lot of it changed with the text message.
Now, I'm going to make another assumption. I'm assuming that your reason for doing this is by connecting people who are Christians, that they already have something in common.
Right.
And so that commonality makes it a little easier for them to connect than it would be if they were not of the same religious affiliation.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that's for a lot of the people who are coming to these events, they are evangelical Christians, and they're also looking for somebody else who, shares that part of their life, just because it kind of informs all their values and just wouldn't be as compatible with maybe somebody else who wasn't on the same page with them as them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was reading a lot about you, and I was very fascinated about your road, your dating road that you have gone through to kind of get to this place that you're at right now. And as I read some of the comments that you've made, of kind of where you were and where you've come, I thought, wow, a lot of our listeners are in the same road right now, or in the same situation that you were in. like thinking things like you said you were overthinking your first dates and you were feeling so anxious about those. How did that affect you? What was going on in your mind on these first dates that you were really overthinking?
Yeah, I love that question. I think we see dating. The reason why I think I was overthinking is because we see dating on TV and movies where they go on one day and then they're automatically a couple and they're automatically
sounds like a
love each
Hallmark
other.
Christmas movie.
Exactly. And we don't actually see any examples of what it's like to just date, to get to know somebody, from being strangers and, we ended up just being friends, or we just ended up not having the chemistry. Like, you just don't see any examples of that in media. And so, we usually model our lives after what we see. If we don't have parents that explain it to us, which most of us didn't, because it was pre-text message that they dated. And so, so I was just getting so anxious. And so I actually, my first online dating experience was I matched on online dating with this youth pastor. So totally my type and everything. And I was like, why do people hate online dating? It's so easy. Hello, I matched with the perfect guy who's going to be my husband. So I was attaching way too early before I even got to know him. And then we went on a few dates. I was so excited. And then I never heard from him again after that. And I was devastated. And no one had ever told me, don't get super attached at first. You're just getting to know them. Do you even like the guy? I was so consumed with being okay, I want this to work so badly. It's really hard for me to keep my hands open and just trust the process and trust that there are enough good guys out there for everybody to get one. And I was like, if this isn't it, then
you just made these two girls smile when you said that.
Yeah.
Did I? Yeah, it's a huge mindset shift. And so, I was getting super, super anxious until really after that experience, I was like, dang, I don't know very much about dating. I have to really learn a lot. So I got my own dating coach. I listened to a lot of really good podcasts about dating and really started stepping into this new idea of just approaching dating as a way of connecting with other people, and that being the number one priority.
Now to kind of explore that a little bit, because and I think we have kind of a shared belief system here that when you look at religion involved, that sometimes there's pressure on you to want to move forward with a family. And so we see a lot of that where their objective is to get married and have a family. And so sometimes moving from A to B is kind of why you push the gas pedal a little too quickly. Do you find that also because of our religious belief in the importance of a family and the importance of having children that kind of causes people anxiety when they don't see themselves moving as forward as maybe they think they should?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you see that a lot more with women who are maybe in their upper 20s, early 30s and beyond. And because, the truth is there is a biological clock, and it is ticking, and there's, a certain age that you're the most fertile, and all these thoughts of will a guy still want me if I'm over 30 or over 25? I wouldn't say it's bad, though. I think it's just keeping everything in perspective, which is important. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Now, something you just mentioned a second ago that I wanted to touch on, because I found this really fascinating, and a lot of the things you talked about is the idea of ghosting. And you felt like, I think you just talked about a second ago, is that all of a sudden you never heard anything. You kind of got ghosted, and then you just felt extremely rejected. How do we help people get over that? I think you made some reference to it when you said, don't get too connected too quick, because the ghosting could happen. But how can we kind of help them get through that point?
Totally. I think it's important for especially women. Now, men do struggle with this too, but I would say predominantly it's more common with women to understand that biologically we are wired to connect early. So we have a womb, so it's in our best interest to find a man that we feel safe with. So we're already kind of fighting against that a little bit. So to keep that in mind, that on a dating app or even a first date, it's going to feel really natural to be like, okay, I want to lock this guy down or get locked down by him. But it's really important to remember that actually it's that men and women think very differently about love. They fall in love differently, and that men actually, for them to value a woman, they need to put in effort and they need to put in work. Just like honestly anything in life, we work for something, we treat it better, we value it more. And as a woman, because we do have the womb, that if a guy isn't asking you for commitment, don't close off all your other options. I'm not saying to cheat on people, but I'm saying before you're actually in a relationship with somebody, realize that like you are the one who does have the biological clock, and that a guy needs to show why he's good enough for you to cut off every single other option to show that he will protect you, cherish you, serve you, love you. Now, you obviously have to be like high quality as well, but I always tell the women, like, let the man move the relationship forward, and you just stay focused on yourself, on your goals, on, you know, still be open, flirting, make yourself available. But just because a guy shows you interest doesn't mean that he's worthy of your commitment. And so you really need to be like observing. And I always say the first 30 to 90 days, data collection. That's all it is. You have to just remember that. I'm just collecting data and seeing how they react. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to negotiate with them. I would say you can still like share how you feel about things of like, hey, I didn't like it when you did that or whatever. But again, you're just picking up like, how does he respond when I share my feelings with him? Is he like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, like tell me more about that, or does he get all defensive and he's like, well, like, sorry, like that's just kind of how I am, because it's like, okay, noted, data collection.
I don't like how you are.
I don't like how he makes me feel, you know, and so this isn't like, what can I say to get him to change? It's like, no, like he's showing you who he is. And same for guys, like she's showing you who she is. And if there's willingness to change, if there's like, you know, like, hey, give me some feedback, I'd love to hear more. Those are all good signs. You know, it doesn't mean that they can't change, because there needs to, if you're not in a relationship or never been in a relationship, you're not going to just come relationship ready always, but you can come with the tools and the mindsets that will, you know, you can be shaped. And so I think that's really important, especially for women, to keep in mind that you are just collecting data and you're not committed to him. He's got to show you why you should cut off your other options, because at the end of the day, the man is the gatekeeper to a relationship and to marriage. And in more of like the secular world, women are the gatekeepers to sex, men are the gatekeepers to a relationship. And so it's important to know that as a woman, of like, if you want a man who's going to lead and is going to like, be in that position of a leader, you have to like let him be moving the relationship forward at the pace that he's ready. But man, if he's taking forever, like if he's taking more than 3 months, like you're allowed to ask for clarity. You're allowed to be like, hey, where do you see this going? I want to get married someday. I want to have a family. And if you don't ask for clarity at the appropriate time, then it's really not on him to have wasted your time, because takes two to tango. So I think a lot of women, they just don't know when to ask the questions. They don't know about the whole collecting data thing. It's kind of like, again, we see on TV that people, they just go on one date and then they're together. And there's not really.
I love that idea of data
like
collecting. Ladies, what do you think?
I think it's so smart. I've heard that it's like after 90 days or whatever is when they start to really show who they actually are. So I think like obviously at the beginning you need to be like looking for the red flags and things like that. But if they start to treat, you know, the people like other people like they do in the first 90 days, they start to treat you like that. And so I think it's smart to just take that in, because if you get too attached quickly, it's going to be like, oh, well, that was dumb. You know, like if you notice those things beforehand, then you'll never have to get to that stage.
I heard once that if you have a crush, you're just uninformed. And I like that a lot.
That is so darn romantic. I think that's about. Could we save that for the Valentine's special?
Not that like if you knew more, you automatically wouldn't like them. It's just that if you grow to love them, then you like them, obviously.
Right.
Or
I know what you mean, but it just sounds
like,
funny to say it that way. I really like you. Well, you're uninformed. That's a great response, isn't it? Just you wait till you get to know me, then you'll find out. No, I see totally what you mean. Okay, that if you, I think the part, if you fall in love and have a crush too quickly, that is generally that you're uninformed, because then you're basing it on emotion and not on data that you've collected, as she's suggesting, that you collect data to see if you're compatible before you develop a romantic feeling.
It's almost like you want what you can't have because you don't know. It's like those famous people. You're like, they are so cool, like, but you've never met them before, right? And then like if you meet them, you're like, oh, this is a normal person.
Then you go to their concert and you think, yeah, they weren't that nice.
I mean, like they're cool and stuff, but they're not like this figure that you've
created them into being something bigger than what they actually, which happens a lot, I think, in dating on both sides, both with men and women. So maybe to paint a picture here. Maybe you could just kind of give us an idea of your typical customer. When someone, who is it that typically would come to you and say, I want to hire a dating coach? What typically have they gone through before they come to you? And then what is your first step? What is your advice that you give them to start?
Yeah, great question. So typically it's women who are over-attachers, who find themselves getting interested in a guy who maybe at first is giving them attention, but then seems like they're the ones that end up pursuing the relationship, or moving the relationship forward, or feel like, man, I'm giving so much and the guy isn't giving much back. That's kind of the niche, because that was my experience. And someone who feels like guys maybe waste their time. I think that's another kind of characteristic of the women that I tend to help. And and then the first steps would be, we talk a lot about, first step is, I have like a 6-month, it's called the Inner Circle program that I bring like just a handful of women through. And we really start with ourselves. And so it's like a triangle. So it's like me, men, and magnetism are like the core things I focus on. So the first thing is me. So I focus on what does your single life look like? Like, do you have a thriving single life where you have a community of other women around you, where you're, you have your hobbies and your passions, and, if you're a Christian, you're serving at church, and you're, so you feel like you have a really full life. And you're, for the most part, happy in your career. You don't have to love it, but not feel like, because dating can create this vacuum where you feel like, if I have this person, it's going to make my life so much better. But then it's really hard not to feel kind of desperate in a relationship, because let's say it's not really the best relationship, but at least you have somebody now. It's like, it's kind of hard to return to that life that was so hopeless before, or like sucked before. But if you create this really abundant life, then it's like, you know what, it's actually going to take a really awesome person to that like actually adds to my life instead of takes away from it. So that's like one thing. And then another thing focus on are like, what are some lies and like ways that we've been like wounded before in the past, that because we have an enemy and he likes to whisper lies into our ears. And there's God's truth, and then there's the enemy. And so that's going to come up more than almost anything in dating. Because think about it, dating, there's no security. There, at least in a relationship, you have a commitment. Marriage, you have a covenant. And then friendships, it's lower stakes. But with dating, it's like there's nothing. You just are kind of just like hoping, you're just trying to guard your heart, but you're trying to get too invested, but you're also like falling in love. And so it's just like, it'll bring up a lot of different like woundings. So whether you have like a rejection wound or an abandonment wound, or you put walls up, like just those things start to come up a ton. And so we really focus on like, okay, what are these lies? Like, is it that I'm always alone? People are always going to leave me. I'm unlovable. I'm too much. I'm not enough. And then replacing it with God's truth of like, you have inherent value because you were made by a creator who sees, who made you. Therefore, you have value and worth and dignity. And for those who believe in Christ, like you are also born into royalty. You are a co-heir with Christ, and you should, like, that's your identity. That's who you are. And that really is what informs everything else in life. And then the third thing that we focus on is a kingdom dating mindset, which means understanding that God has a even bigger purpose for your dating life other than just to find your spouse, and realizing like, you don't know why you're going on dates with somebody. It could be because that could be your spouse, but maybe it's to encourage them. Or maybe it's because you're going to see something like, for a woman, like, wow, that guy treated me so amazing and like just cherished me and made me feel so like seen. That's the kind of guy that I want. And also like, I want to become more like that type of person. So you can encourage and be like, hey man, you know what? Like I want to, like, maybe we didn't have sparks, but I want to give you some feedback that I felt really safe when you did XYZ. Now that guy leaves feeling a little bit more confident. And who knows, maybe that guy will be your son's mentor someday. You just don't know where you're sowing in the kingdom of God, and you're going to reap at a later date. And so those are
that's so true. And I was just going to add one thing, and that is that we had a guest on once before that said every time she went on a date, she thought, how can I help this person?
Right.
What have I learned that I could help this person along? And then how can I go back and reflect on the date, and how does it help me? How did that date help me to become a better person?
And it sounds like your first step with people is to force them to look at themselves. And sometimes that's hard to do, to look at ourselves and say, okay, where am I coming into this? Because a lot of times we don't think of those kinds of things because, as you said, a lot of times we're looking for someone else to rescue us. And we think, well, if I just had the love of my life, then I would be happy.
I'd be happy.
But it sounds like what you're saying here, the reality is that you've got to be happy first, but before you can bring somebody into this.
Yeah, you have to, I think, and we get our happiness, I think, from being in a relationship with our Creator through Jesus Christ. And I think that that's the way to have for me in my life, I found that that's like my ultimate satisfaction. And if I don't have my identity solid in that, then I'm going to be looking for it to be affirmed in other areas, and likely in the person that I love the most, which will be my spouse. And that's a lot of pressure to put on one person to be like, hey, you need to affirm me. And also then if they mess up, then it's a reflection. It will be a reflection on me, or it'll make me scared. Like, oh, you lost your job. How are we going to be like provided for? Versus if I'm like, oh, God is my provider. Maybe he's providing through my husband, but ultimately it's God. So I'm not going to put all this pressure on my husband because I know ultimately I'm safe. God's going to provide for me, and then I can just be free to love my husband.
That's so smart.
Do most people resonate with that? Do you have is it pretty easy to get people to make that transition, to do that self-focus, or do you find that some people get caught up in the inability to do that at first?
Yeah. I think most people just haven't really thought of it that way. They haven't made the connection of how important it is for us to be our identity. But the one connection, at least with women, that's been really helpful is this idea of like, how do I become feminine, in the sense of like, how do I lean back? How am I receptive to a man? How do I let him give to me? How do I let him lead? And I say, ultimately, as females, like, we need everybody, but especially females, because men are bigger, faster, stronger. We need to feel safe with a man. And it's understandable that we're going to try to grab at control because we don't feel safe. So, for example, he's not being very clear in his communication. He's not really making very good plans. Let's say, as a female, it's our temptation to be like, I'll just make the plans. I'll just pick the restaurant. I'll just tell you when to meet me, right? But then that doesn't actually invite the man to step up into his role as a leader. And ultimately, we end up feeling like, man, I'm doing all the work around here. And a guy, he'll either go passive and he'll just let you do it, or he'll start competing with you for that leadership spot. And then he won't feel respected as a man, and he'll lose attraction for you because he's not going to feel like a man in your presence. And so I always tell women, like, hey, you got to feel safe. And so you have to realize your identity and who you are in Christ and with God. Like, he keeps you safe. He is your protector. He is your provider. And know that ultimately God is watching out for you. He's got your back. And so when you feel scared, don't reach for outside things. Go straight to your dad in heaven, your father, and be like, Dad, I feel really scared right now. And he will speak to you and say, like, I've got you protected. You don't need to be scared. And so then that enables the women to lean back into this safety, which then makes them a lot more attractive to men. A man's like, oh, she's like, they'll say like submissive. It doesn't mean that you roll over and you play dead, but it's type of submission, but it just means that like you allow them to have influence, and you trust them enough to be like, okay, they will figure out the plan. Maybe it's not my first choice, but I'm going to be grateful for what they do plan. I'm going to affirm where I can and know that anything else, like, I'm safe with my father.
Interesting. Right. So kind of going back to the more traditional male-female roles that we've kind of lost a lot in society. Those are kind of pushed to the side. I have to admit, on our podcast, we don't really talk about that too much. We don't really.
No, we should.
Should we more?
Yeah.
Should we more? Should we less? Does that scare you, ladies?
I mean, I think it's a topic that definitely needs to be addressed in all areas, because I think I think there's things to be learned from the way that things are now and from the way that was in the past. So I think that there's a good mixture of both.
Mm-hmm. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I would love for you guys to talk about it because I
She's like, not me, you.
Well,
right.
Just
well,
because I have a lot to learn. That's something that I'm really curious about and I'm working with just because I'm trying to go into the military, and that is something that I've like prayed about a lot, and it's like really meaningful to me, and I haven't already contracted, so it's still kind of up in the air, but it is something that I struggle with because I really feel like I should. I mean, that's personal, but yeah, like I definitely think it's really important, but I would love to hear what other people have to say about it because I have a lot of questions as well.
Well, that just seems really refreshing, and I love way that she's just
I love what she's saying.
Up front with that. And maybe we need to rethink that. Not that we're opposed to that in any way, but I just don't know that we've ever had a podcast where we've actually talked about that. We there's certainly a lot of aspects of this that we've talked about, but I think you first need to be comfortable in yourself.
Right.
And becoming comfortable in yourself, first thing, means to develop what your relationship is with Christ.
Right.
And your belief system, because that is so much of who you are.
I also think something else that you said, Mel, that I found really interesting was that as you develop that relationship with Christ, not only do you become a stronger person, but also that you become more attractive to men. And vice versa. I think men do as well, is they develop that relationship.
You become more attractive to someone who's looking for a relationship with someone who is connected with their religious beliefs.
Well, and I think there's confidence in that because you know that you are much more than yourself.
Right. Yeah. And when you look at a relationship, how important that, I look at my wife and our connection on our religious beliefs is so important in our relationship of why we stayed together for so many years. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Mel. Go ahead.
Oh no, I completely agree that with the confidence, because I've noticed the more confident that I've become in knowing who I am in Christ and knowing that it's not from any of my external value, that it's from the value that who God says I am and who Jesus says I am, then I really do walk with a different attitude. And one of them for me that really hit home a few years ago, and it kind of changed everything. There was a song by Maverick City Worship called Jireh. And there's a part in it where it says, I'm already loved, I'm already chosen, I know who I am, I know what you've spoken. And I was just like, I am chosen. Like, I am chosen by the King of Kings, by Jesus. Like, he has chosen me. And then I kind of compare it to that feeling. And ladies, you can probably understand what I'm talking about, and guys too. But like when a hot guy, like he's like chooses you, like you're the one, or like he likes you back or whatever. And you're like, oh, like I just got chosen, like you just get kind of this high off of it. Or like he likes your picture or whatever. And you're like, he picked me. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I walked around life with that energy? Because you feel unstoppable. You're like, I've been chosen. I feel like I'm the king of the world. Like, because I've been chosen, what can stop me? And I realized that that's the same kind of like high that I can always get from knowing like Jesus chooses me. So I'm like, it's like big chosen energy of like, I can walk around like I'm chosen and I don't need anybody to choose me. I don't need, if a guy doesn't choose me or not, I'm like, weirdo. I'm the chosen girl. I'm the girl who gets chosen. Like, didn't you know?
Queen.
I'm the queen, But really, it's it's not in this cocky way, but in this like, okay, you don't have to like me because I already know that like I'm chosen.
Yeah, I think we should all walk around with that confidence.
Well, and if you have that degree of confidence, it probably takes your anxiety away from relationships because you're good either way. You're not thinking that you need to be saved in some way
by a man or a woman
because you're already saved. You're not worried about that.
Yeah.
So on the technical aspects of how you do this, because you're dealing with people who are in very different parts of the country, and so do people connect through dating apps? Do they swipe each other? Or do they go to conferences? Do they are they mostly finding people who live in an area where they're close by, or is there people who are dating remotely that you work with?
Yeah. So most of my clients I work pretty much exclusively over like virtually, and so they're all around the country. And it's really up to the individual. I think most people would probably prefer something local just because it's like long distance has its own difficulties, especially if you meet long distance. I'm not anti long distance though, but I I do workshops, and my first workshop was last month in May, and I did it specifically on online dating, because I have been online dating for the past like 5 years. I've actually been on over like 70 first dates, most of them being from online dating over the 5 years. So do the
See,
math.
there
It's
you
not
go,
like,
ladies. You have something to shoot for now.
Right.
70.
Crazy.
Yeah, much
That's
respect,
insane.
man. That's exhausting.
yeah. But I mean, keep in mind it's over 5 years. But
That's fair.
That's fair, yeah.
but it really helped me take that anxiety down and not be so like high stakes about every single date, because when they're few and far between, then you're like, oh, like it's the uncertainty, the unknown gives you anxiety. But anyway, so I highly recommend dating apps. And a lot of my clients, I can think of 2 right now that they weren't on dating apps. But then I was like, you got to get on the apps. And then they did, and they found their boyfriends. And actually, my old roommate, I was like, Sarah, you got to get on the apps. And then she was like, okay, fine. Met her husband like a few months later. And so obviously it's not, I mean, I've been on it for 5 years. I still haven't found my husband, but I think of it like it's not your lifeline. It's just a resource to use.
I agree. We both, I think we agree with that on our podcast. And our thing was always go on the dating app, find someone to go out to dinner with, sit and talk and communicate.
Yeah, do you find that you find people on dating apps who are not co-located with you that you're interested in dating? Or does that kill the deal for you?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't go on dating apps.
You don't?
I don't.
Oh, see, Mel just told you to.
Well, no, she didn't
And
tell
I'm
her. She just said
sorry.
if you wanted to. But, and so I'm guessing that you just get asked out enough that you don't need to go on the apps.
Yeah.
Macy's very outgoing.
The poor
Mel,
little
so.
rich girl here. You know, we're not going
She's
to
very
cry for
outgoing.
you. Get you on the dating app. Would you date someone remotely? Is that
No,
No.
I cannot. I think long distance is awful. Like if I'm not with somebody, I will lose feelings with them, and it's just that's how it is.
All right.
And I know there's other people that can do that. My roommate's one of them. She's been dating a boy
Right.
long distance for like a year.
So it's just you, Sophia. What do you think? Is that would that be a deal killer for you if this person was several states away?
No, it's definitely harder, and
Yeah.
I've done it is the thing, and so that's hard because it's ended in a variety of different ways. But
Right.
I think,
But ended was the important word in that sentence.
well,
It ended.
well, I think it's definitely not like a deal breaker, but really, like everything, it just like really, really does depend how they handle it. I think it was cool. I did. Like once when I was younger, I tried to like have a little thing with someone that was like living a couple states away, and I learned a lot from them about
All right.
communication and stuff like that. Like even though they were so far, like it was a really good learning experience for me. I definitely wouldn't go back to that person or that situation specifically. But like I learned, I'm like grateful for it. So I don't know. Like I would try if it felt right. I don't think it would be like off the table. It's not ideal though.
Right. So Mel, how have you made this successful? How have you made this work? It sounds like you have. It sounds like that it works for you and for your clients that you work with. How have you gotten past that distance in a relationship?
Yeah. I would say most people do local because you can set your parameters for how far away you want. And so I think I've noticed that like at a younger age, because you 2 girls are still in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So the thing is like that's interesting about I always tell people I'm like date in college if you can, because and in high school really, because like you said, like you have a lot of the same age people in like the same area.
Yes, I
And
hope
then
everybody
it's really
heard her
when you-
just say that. So.
Yes. Let's just
Yeah,
say that
it-
again. Date in high school
And
and
college.
college because there's a lot of opportunity right in front of you, right?
So you just heard a
Come on.
professional dating
Right,
coach
from
just
a
say that.
professional
So.
dating coach.
do it. It just gets, I mean, yeah. And I know there's a lot of people also I want to speak to who like their dream was to get married out of college, but it just didn't work out. So like there's room for that too. But I think that a lot of people sometimes are told, depending on which particular religious circle you're in, but it's like, oh, you have so much time. But anyway, with the dating app, sometimes like you want it to be obviously local, but you're like, there just really aren't that many people in the area that I'm that I'm living right now. So you are a little bit more open to long distance.
Right.
So I would say like try to make it as local as possible, but also like I said, not making dating apps your lifeline, just making it a resource, but think in your head, I'm going to try to meet people when I'm out and about, and I'm going to be intentional about, you go to the grocery store and you see people, you go to the post office, you go to the gym, like try to stay more present where you're actually at, go to church. And that's also why I teach in like the triangle, the magnetism part of it, which is like how to drop the hanky, how to indicate that you're interested so guys come up and talk to you. Because I think that's a really important part of making yourself visible.
I like what she just said about being intentional.
Right.
And actually
I want to hear
making
specifics on that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Give us a little primer on intentionality.
Yeah. So that just means, because we all do, we're out and about. Even if you work from home, you still have to go out and about. And if you don't, you should be being intentional about going to the grocery store, going to the gym. Like, make sure you're not just staying in your home. I know it's a little different talking to like college age kids versus older, because in college you're always out and about, classes and whatnot. But I think as you go older, it's easier to get kind of caught in your little routine, and you just go to like one or two places and you go back home. And it's like, how do you expect to meet people if you're not going out and being intentional about, being off your phone? I always tell ladies, I'm like, every time we're leaving the house, we're like, we're going to be dressed to the nines, but like hair done, makeup, like feel confident. That's basically feel good in what you're wearing, feel confident. Because these are all opportunities to get asked on a date and to meet somebody.
Right.
Don't be on your phone. To be like, slow it down and, make eye contact with the cute guy you see. Smile, like look away, smile. Play with your hair.
She
like,
said the 3-second rule.
She did. Look,
yes.
look away, and look back.
It's like guys are drawn to that like they can't help but talk to you if they're attracted to you and interested. Like they'll talk to you. If they're not, they probably have a girlfriend.
Sorry about that. Before we run out of time, there are a couple other things that I wanted to talk to you about that were on your Instagram that I just thought were genius. And Bob and I always like when professionals agree with what we have said.
It makes us think you're really smart.
So on her Instagram, Bob, she said that she had 4 behaviors for instantly boosting your attractiveness.
Oh.
Okay, ladies, you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, one was, and we talk about eye contact all the time, but this is what Mel said: hold eye contact.
Yes.
So when you're talking to someone, look at them, right, Mel?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on. The second one is to be helpful, help others, which is, we talk about being kind,
right?
And that's really important. I love this one: nodding in agreement.
Yes.
That shows you're involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is be on time.
Oh.
So I love those.
I need to work on that one.
Yeah, me too.
I love those.
I was a little late for this podcast today. Is that why you're bringing that up, Tom? Just come out and tell me if you're upset.
Bob's the reason I brought that up. But I love those. I think that's really great advice for anyone.
I do too.
Because those are 4 things you can control, right, Mel?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how do your clients respond to that? Is that do you have those 4 things because you notice that that's a problem with a lot of people?
I think, I mean, it is definitely like the lateness. I think it depends also in like kind of the culture that you live. I'm in San Diego, and everyone always jokes everyone's late in San Diego. It's kind of like, like beach time or whatever. But at the end of the day, those are very controllable actions that just make you instantly more likable. There have been like studies on them too. And I think anything that you can get, I mean, I'm really big into personal development and self-growth, and I think that paying attention to those little things you're a nicer person to be around, you're more pleasant to be around, and paying attention to those I think are important.
Okay, last thing, Mel, I have to ask you about, and this was one of my absolute favorite posts on your Instagram, and that was I saw you walking around Home Depot.
Oh, I saw this.
Right at the beginning of cuffing season, holding up a sign that says I'm single.
Right at the head of what
cuffing season?
I did it before the Home Depot trend. To say, there's a whole like trend now in Home Depot. And
is it really? So does it work?
Mm-hmm. Man, that was like probably the most embarrassing like TikTok I've ever had to do. My roommate was like, we had a whole plan. I was like, okay, I'm not going to open the sign yet. You're going to be on this side of the store, so I'm going to walk in this side, and then you're going to be filming me from here. I'm going to walk this way, and then we're going to go out and get in the car and leave. Just because everyone's like looking at you like you're a weirdo. But it actually did work. I mean, I'm like standing in the parking lot. I haven't even gone inside yet, and this guy pulls up in his van, and he was like 60 or something, so not exactly the target market I was looking for. And he's like, "You want to hang out sometime?"
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like,
He didn't
"Oh,
say
sorry."
he didn't say you want to go out to dinner by chance. did he?
No, he just said to hang out. And so
All right,
I was
so,
like, "Oh, actually, it's just for a video."
So Mel, we have to get Sophia and Macy committed to try this, and we
Oh,
can
gosh.
video them and put it up on our Instagram. What do you
Oh,
think?
yeah.
Can we commit you to that?
I'll do it for you, Tom. I'll do it for you.
All right, there you go. I'll work on that.
fair.
Okay, and do you guys know cuffing season?
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, Macy knows.
I do.
Tell us, Macy. Tell Bob what it is.
Cuffing season is basically prior to winter, I would say. I mean, you can be cuffed anytime. Cuffing basically just means that you're actually dating someone, your boyfriend, girlfriend. Not going out with them, your boyfriend, girlfriend,
Yeah.
right?
So it's
You have someone to hang out all winter with.
You got a thing.
You got a thing, yeah. Or you're dating.
Okay.
So there you go. Well, Mel, thank you. This was just amazing. I love everything you had to say. You have a wonderful spirit. I love your testimony
Yes.
in the Savior. I think it's important for everyone to hear that. I love what you had to say about developing your relationship with Christ. It helps give you more confidence inside, helps you radiate, and people will see that and feel that. And so thank you so much for sharing that with us today. And Bob, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. What a great show. Very interesting.
Sophia, Macy, thank you.
Of
Ew,
course.
That was awesome.
Mel, before we let you go, tell everyone how they can find you and how they can get a hold of you. And if they want to talk to you more, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. It's IYKYK dating, and that stands for If You Know, You Know. And I'm also on TikTok at the same @ and then if you have any questions or anything, just DM me. I'm on there pretty active, and we have our next dating workshop on June 16th and 17th, and we will be selling tickets via Instagram there.
And you have dating mixers coming up too, right?
Yeah, so we have them mostly in Southern California right now, but I'm in the process of partnering with different dating coaches around the country. I went around the country last year, but trying to you just get different partners. So we have one upcoming in Orange County for the 2nd of June. Oh, sorry, the 3rd of June. That's going to be upcoming for the next mixer.
Awesome. Maybe we can talk you into coming to Salt Lake sometime, Mel.
Yeah.
We'll have a mixer
I've
here.
never
That'd
been.
be
It'd be
awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming. You guys, I
Thank
hope
you,
that you'll
Mel.
take an opportunity to reach out to Mel and follow her on Instagram. She has some great stuff on there. It's not serious. It's very lighthearted, very fun, and just full of amazing advice that I think would help everyone that goes on there and has an opportunity to listen. Hey, also, you can follow us on Instagram at the It's Just Dinner podcast on Instagram, and we're also on TikTok. Sophia is really busy, Mel, putting a bunch of stuff up for us. So hopefully you'll see some of
Expect
Mel.
an ad, yeah,
We'll
don't
try to make
worry.
sure that Mel gets up on our Instagram and that we can follow not only her, but you can follow us as well. Macy, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. Hey, and listen, you guys, just to go have fun out there, will you?